This cat was abandoned at the university, but what happens next will make you cry. She waited. On the first day, Willow sat by the dormitory door, believing he would return. On the second, she wandered around campus, searching for his scent, his voice. On the third, she realized he would never come back, but the worst was yet to come. What happens to a cat who spends her entire life loving someone, and then suddenly is forgotten? Willow wasn't born at the university. She was found as a kitten, meowing alone behind the garbage containers near the dormitories. The smell of food from the cafeteria attracted her, but the hurried feet of students frightened her until one cold night, a young student named Ben found her. He carefully picked her up, tucked her inside his coat, and brought her to his small room in the student housing. At that time, he also felt lost, coming from a small town to study, away from everything he knew. He spent sleepless nights studying without close friends, without company, and Willow, without realizing it, became the silent presence that brought him comfort. For years, she was his shadow. She slept among his books, watched him type on his laptop until late hours, and greeted him every night as if he were the center of her world. The soft purr of her contentment became the soundtrack to Ben's college years. Their routine was simple but meaningful. Mornings began with Willow's gentle paw tapping Ben's face, her way of saying it was breakfast time. Ben would grumble good-naturedly, then reach out to scratch behind her ears, his fingers finding that perfect spot that made her eyes close in bliss. "Good morning, my little shadow," he'd murmur, his voice still thick with sleep. In the evenings, when Ben returned from classes, Willow would be waiting by the door, her tail swishing in anticipation. The moment the door opened, she'd stretch luxuriously, then trot over to rub against his legs, welcoming him home. Sometimes Ben would lift her up to his shoulder, where she'd perch regally as he moved around the small room, telling her about his day, as if she understood every word. During exam periods, when Ben's desk lamp burned well past midnight, Willow kept faithful vigil. She'd curl up beside his textbooks, occasionally batting at his pencil or walking across his notes, not to disturb, but to remind him she was there. When exhaustion finally overtook him and his head drooped over his books, Willow would climb on his lap, her warmth and weight a living blanket that somehow made the stress more bearable. But time passed, and one day, without Willow being able to understand, Ben graduated and left. That morning, his suitcase was leaning against the door. The room that was once full of books and scattered clothes was nearly empty. Willow watched him attentively, trying to understand why everything was different. When he grabbed his keys and turned to leave, she approached, rubbing against his leg, as she always did. But this time, Ben didn't stop. He knelt down, gave her head a quick pat, and whispered something softly. She heard his voice, but didn't understand. When the door closed, Willow ran. She scratched at the wood, meowed, called out, but outside Ben's footsteps were fading down the hallway. Willow remained there, sitting, waiting for him to come back. The sun rose and set, but he didn't return. As darkness fell on that first night alone, the familiar sounds of the dormitory continued. Doors slamming, music playing, laughter echoing down the corridors. But the one sound Willow longed to hear, Ben's footsteps returning to the room, never came. She paced the small space, jumping onto the windowsill to peer out at the campus paths below, hoping to spot his familiar figure walking home. Her food bowl, which Ben had left filled to the brim, was still half full, but Willow couldn't bring herself to eat. The water in her dish grew stale. The bed, where she and Ben had spent countless nights with her curled against his chest, still held his scent, and that night Willow burrowed into his pillow, seeking comfort in the lingering traces of him. As the minutes turned to hours and the hours to a full day, Willow's confusion grew into a gnawing anxiety. The door to their room remained firmly shut, a barrier she couldn't cross. The sounds of other students passing in the hallway made her ears perk up every time, only to droop again when none of them stopped at her door. None of them were Ben. Something fundamental had changed. Something beyond Willow's comprehension. The unthinkable had happened. Her person, her whole world, had vanished. And as the first lonely night gave way to dawn, A terrible realization began to sink into her feline heart. She had been left behind. The next day, she went out looking for him. She walked through the campus corridors, sniffing the places where they used to spend time together, listening to every voice in the crowd, hoping to hear his. When she saw a student wearing a backpack similar to Ben's, her heart raced. But when the boy turned his face, she realized it wasn't him. By the second day, without Ben, hunger drove Willow to venture beyond the now locked door of what had been their room. A cleaning staff member had opened the door, allowing Willow to slip out into the hallway. She moved cautiously at first, then with growing determination as Ben's scent led her through the building and out onto the campus grounds. The university was a different place without Ben by her side. What once had been familiar territory now seemed vast and intimidating. Students rushed past, their hurried strides nearly trampling her as she darted between legs and ducked under benches. The cacophony of voices, laughter, and music that normally faded into the background now bombarded her sensitive ears, making it difficult to isolate any one sound that might lead her to Ben. Willow followed the paths they had walked together countless times. She visited the oak tree near the science building, where Ben often studied on warm days, with Willow nestled in the crook of his arm as he highlighted passages in his textbooks. She crept into the campus coffee shop, where he sometimes snuck her in, hidden in his jacket, and shared tiny bits of his muffin when no one was looking. Each location held memories, but no trace of Ben himself. Her search took her to the library steps, where they'd spent lazy Sunday afternoons, Ben reading aloud in a whisper while Willow dozed in the dappled sunshine. She slipped into the open door of the auditorium, where his graduation ceremony must have taken place, though she couldn't have known the significance of the empty rows of chairs and the stage now being dismantled. As evening approached, a chill autumn rain began to fall. Willow sought shelter under a bench outside the administration building, her fur damp and her spirit dampening with it. A group of students rushed past, huddled under umbrellas, and Willow caught a fragment of conversation. Last of the seniors moved out yesterday. Campus feels empty now. Willow's ears perked up. She followed the students, keeping a safe distance, listening intently. Their words washed over her meaningless, except for the occasional mention of graduation and leaving. She couldn't understand the concept, couldn't grasp that an entire chapter of Ben's life and hers had come to its natural conclusion. As darkness fell, hunger gnawed at her more insistently. The cafeteria dumpsters offered some relief. A half-eaten sandwich, scraps of chicken from someone's abandoned meal. It was nothing like the premium cat food Ben had always provided, but it would sustain her for now until she found him. She slept fitfully that night, curled in a tight ball beneath a rhododendron bush, its leaves providing meager protection from the drizzling rain. Dreams of Ben calling her name, of his warm hands, lifting her onto his lap, of the safety of their small room, haunted her sleep. With the dawn of the third day came an understanding that tore at her heart. The campus was emptying. Summer break had begun, and Ben, like so many others, had gone home. Wherever home was, it wasn't here anymore. It wasn't with her. On the third day, hunger began to hurt. The night cold was worse than anything she had ever felt. Still, she waited. But then, finally, she understood he would not come back. From that moment on, Willow began to wander aimlessly. The campus, which was once her home, became a hostile place. Students passed by hurriedly, not noticing her golden eyes full of confusion. Some threw food scraps, others shooed her away. When she tried to enter the dormitories again, she was brutally pushed outside. Summer faded into fall, and with it came new faces to the university. Freshmen wide-eyed and overwhelmed, returning students greeting each other with boisterous hugs, faculty members striding purposefully across the quad with armloads of syllabi and lesson plans. The campus hummed with renewed energy, but none of it included a place for Willow. She learned to become invisible. During daylight hours, she kept to the shadows, slinking along building edges and ducking under shrubs when groups of students approached. The landscape gardens that dotted the campus became her hunting grounds, though her domesticated upbringing had left her ill-prepared for catching the mice and small birds that could have supplemented her diet. More often than not, she relied on discarded food from outdoor events or benevolent strangers, who occasionally left kibble or scraps near the places she was known to frequent. One such stranger was Martha, an elderly custodian who worked the night shift in the humanities building. Martha had noticed the small tabby cat appearing regularly near the service entrance around midnight when Martha took her break. At first, she merely observed the cat from a distance, noting her thinning coat and the way her ribs showed through her once plush fur. "Poor little stray," Martha murmured one night, setting down a plastic container of water and a few pieces of turkey from her sandwich. "Someone left you behind, didn't they?" Willow kept her distance that first night, waiting until Martha returned inside before approaching the offerings. But over the weeks that followed, a cautious routine developed. Martha would emerge at midnight, food in hand, and Willow would wait at the edge of the light spilling from the doorway each night. She ventured a bit closer until finally she would eat while Martha sat quietly on the steps, speaking softly to her. "I see you, little one," Martha would say. "I know what it's like to be invisible to most folks." But Martha, with her arthritic hands and fixed income, could offer only minimal assistance. And when the first semester ended and winter break began, even this tenuous connection was temporarily severed as the campus emptied once more and Martha's shifts were reduced. Winter came early that year. Snow covered the sidewalks and the wind cut like blades. Willow learned to seek shelter where she could. Sometimes she managed to curl up near the heaters of the arts building. Other times she hid among cardboard boxes left behind the library. Her fur, once soft, became rough and dirty. Her eyes, once full of life, were dimmed, but worse than everything was the emptiness. The cold was relentless. Willow's paws cracked and bled from the ice, and salt spread on walkways. Food became scarcer as outdoor events ceased and fewer people lingered outside to drop crumbs or leave leftovers on benches. The water in the decorative fountains froze solid, forcing Willow to lick at icicles or patches of fresh snow for hydration. One particularly brutal night, with temperatures plummeting well below freezing, Willow sought shelter in the narrow space beneath the steps of the science building. The concrete was frigid against her belly, but at least here, the wind couldn't reach her. She curled into a tight ball, tucking her nose beneath her tail, conserving what little body heat remained. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by shivers that racked her small frame. In her dreams, she was back in Ben's room, curled on his lap as he stroked her fur and murmured endearments. The phantom warmth of the dream made the harsh reality of waking all the more cruel. As winter deepened, Willow's once sharp senses began to dull. Hunger became a constant companion, no longer a sharp pang, but a hollow ache that never quite left. Her movement slowed. The quick reflexes that had helped her avoid capture by campus security or well-meaning but rough-handed students grew sluggish. Even her meow, once clear and insistent, faded to a raspy whisper. Time was cruel. And then came the storm. That night the rain fell hard. Thunder tore through the sky. Willow tried to curl up under a car, but cold water ran from all sides. She was soaked, trembling, her paws aching from wandering aimlessly. When she tried to cross the street in search of a dry place, a car braked abruptly. The driver shouted, but Willow didn't react. She just slowly retreated to the sidewalk, her body too weak to run. It was at that moment that she gave up. The storm had been building for days. Meteorologists on the news stations and student lounges and faculty offices had warned of its severity, their concerned voices floating out through open windows as Willow prowled the campus perimeter. Potential flooding, high winds, residents advised to stay indoors. The warnings meant nothing to a cat, but the changing air pressure and the ominous darkening of the sky triggered an ancient instinct that sent Willow searching for shelter long before the first raindrops fell. But adequate shelter was hard to find. The covered walkways between buildings quickly became wind tunnels, driving the rain sideways in stinging sheets. The overhangs above building entrances offered momentary respite until security guards emerged to lock up, shooing away the bedraggled cat with impatient gestures and occasional kicks aimed in her general direction. As night descended, the storm intensified. Lightning split the darkness in brilliant, terrifying flashes, followed immediately by thunder that seemed to shake the very ground beneath Willow's paws. The rain fell in a relentless deluge, turning walkways into streams and grassy areas into muddy quagmires that sucked at her feet when she tried to cross them. Disoriented and increasingly desperate, Willow found herself near the edge of campus, where university property gave way to the surrounding town. The streets here were less populated, the buildings older and less maintained. A row of parked cars offered potential shelter, and Willow dragged herself beneath a battered sedan, her strength waning with each step. The space beneath the car was marginally drier, but water still streamed across the asphalt, soaking her belly fur as she lay flat against the ground. The metal above her grew colder as the night progressed, radiating a chill that seemed to penetrate to her bones. Still, it was better than being fully exposed to the elements, and Willow drifted into a state of semi-consciousness, too exhausted to seek better accommodation. Hours passed. The storm, rather than abating, grew more intense. Water began to pool deeper beneath the car, rising to cover Willow's legs as she lay there. The sensation of being partially submerged finally roused her from her stupor. Instinct overrode exhaustion, compelling her to move to find higher ground. She crawled from beneath the sedan, immediately assaulted by the full force of the storm. Rain plastered her fur to her skeletal frame, and wind buffeted her with such strength that she staggered sideways. Her vision, already compromised by malnutrition and fatigue, blurred further in the darkness. Streets that might have been familiar in daylight now seemed alien and threatening in her confusion. Willow stepped off the curb into the street, unaware of the headlights approaching until they illuminated her rain-soaked form in their harsh glare. The screech of brakes, the splash of tires through standing water, the blaring of a horn, all crashed over her in a wave of sensory overload. She froze, a living statue in the middle of the road, as the vehicle skidded to a halt mere inches from where she stood. The driver's angry shout cut through the sound of the rain. A car door opened, then slammed shut, but Willow couldn't move. Fear, exhaustion, and a profound sense of defeat held her immobile. Only when a foot splashed toward her did some last flicker of self-preservation stir in her heart. She backed away slowly, not running, but merely retreating, until she felt the curb under her hind paws and managed to climb back onto the relative safety of the sidewalk. The driver returned to his vehicle, engine roaring as he accelerated away, sending a wave of water cascading over Willow's already drenched form. The brief confrontation had depleted her last reserves of energy. Each step became a monumental effort as she dragged herself toward the looming shadow of the university library in the distance, its stone bulk promising at least some barrier against the wind, if not the rain. She crawled to a dark corner near the library, lay down on the wet ground, and closed her eyes. And that's how Emma found her. Emma was in her final year of college, but she didn't share the excitement of the other students. While everyone talked about jobs and future plans, she felt a weight in her chest. She didn't know where she would go after this. The truth was that she had always felt alone. As a child, she was abandoned by her father, and this feeling of being left behind followed her throughout her life. On that rainy night, she was running to the library when she saw a small, motionless body on the ground. She stopped, knelt down, saw the half-closed golden eyes and the wet fur stuck to the thin body. Something inside her broke. Carefully, she touched the cat. Willow didn't react. Emma had never considered herself a cat person. Growing up, her mother's allergies had precluded pets of any kind, and the transient nature of college life hadn't seemed conducive to pet ownership. But something about the small, bedraggled creature huddled against the library wall pierced through Emma's carefully constructed defenses. The cat was barely breathing, its thin sides rising and falling in shallow, irregular movements. Its fur, which Emma guessed might have been a warm, tabby color when dry and healthy, was plastered against its frame in sodden clumps, revealing an alarmingly pronounced spine and ribs. The creature's eyes were half-lidded, showing just a sliver of golden iris that seemed devoid of life or hope. "Hey there," Emma whispered, her voice nearly lost in the sound of the rain. "Are you hurt?" The cat gave no indication that it had hurt her. Emma glanced around, hoping to spot another student, or perhaps a campus security guard who might know what to do. But the storm had driven everyone indoors. The quad was deserted save for Emma and the dying cat. Emma hewed her lip, torn by indecision. The research paper that had driven her to the library on such a miserable night was due in less than 12 hours. Her grade in contemporary American literature and possibly her scholarship hung in the balance. She couldn't afford to waste time on a stray cat that might be beyond saving anyway. And yet, with a sigh that was part resignation and part determination, Emma shrugged out of her rain jacket. The thin, waterproof material wasn't much, but it was the only protection she had to offer. With gentle movements, she scooped the unresisting cat into the makeshift sling created by her jacket. "And I don't know what I'm doing," she told the cat as she cradled it against her chest, feeling its faint heartbeat against her own. "But I can't just leave you here." The walk back to her off-campus apartment was a blur of rain and wind and the increasingly concerning stillness of the bundle in her arms. By the time Emma fumbled her key into the lock, she was soaked to the skin, shivering with cold and a growing fear that she might be carrying a corpse. Her roommate, Tara, looked up from her laptop with an expression of shock that quickly morphed into horror. "What is that? And why is it dripping all over our floor?" "It's a cat," Emma said, the obviousness of the statement striking her as almost comical despite the gravity of the situation. "I found it by the library. It's dying, Tara." "Well, it can't die here," Tara said, already backing away, her nose wrinkling in disgust. "We'll lose our security deposit, and I'm pretty sure pets aren't allowed in the lease." Emma felt a flash of anger, hot and unfamiliar. "It's not a pet. It's a living creature that needs help, and I'm not putting it back out in that storm." Before Tara could protest further, Emma carried the cat into her small bedroom and gently laid it on a folded towel she placed on her bed. Under the harsh light of her desk lamp, the cat looked even worse than it had in the dim illumination of the campus walkways. Its breathing was labored, its eyes now fully closed, and its body temperature felt dangerously low, even to Emma's untrained touch. A quick internet search confirmed her fears. The cat was in critical condition and needed immediate veterinary care. But it was nearly midnight. The storm was intensifying, and Emma's ancient Honda had been making ominous noises for weeks. The nearest emergency vet was on the other side of town. "What am I supposed to do?" she whispered to the unresponsive cat. "I'm not equipped for this. I don't even know if you want to be saved." As if in answer, the cat's eyes fluttered open, revealing those startling golden irises that seemed to look directly into Emma's soul. A faint sound, not quite a meow, more sigh with a hint of vibration, escaped its throat. Emma's heart clenched. "Okay," she said, reaching out to stroke one finger gently along the cat's wet head. "Okay, we'll figure this out together." She returned the next day, brought food, sat by her side for hours. In the first few days, Willow didn't even look at her, but Emma persisted. Until one afternoon, as the sun was beginning to set, Willow approached. At that moment, Emma realized that it wasn't just a girl saving a stray cat. They were two broken souls finding a home in each other. The healing was slow for both of them. For the first week, Willow remained more specter than cat in Emma's small apartment. She found hiding places Emma hadn't known existed, behind the refrigerator, inside a box spring, within a narrow gap between bookshelf and wall. Food disappeared from the dishes Emma set out, and the litter box showed signs of use, but actual sightings of the cat were rare and fleeting. Tara, Emma's roommate, maintained a wary distance, partly out of genuine allurophobia and partly from resentment over not being consulted before a disease-ridden stray was brought into their shared space. Her complaints diminished somewhat when Emma agreed to deep clean the common areas twice weekly and keep the cat confined to her bedroom when she wasn't home. "You know this is temporary, right?" Tara reminded her after 10 days of cat ownership. "You can't take it with you after graduation. Your mom's allergic, remember." Emma had been so focused on the immediate needs of nursing the cat back to health that she hadn't looked beyond the end of the semester. The reminder felt like a bucket of ice water. Graduation was less than 2 months away. What then? She pushed the thought aside, one crisis at a time. The turning point came on a quiet Sunday afternoon, 3 weeks after the rescue. Emma sat cross-legged on her bed, textbooks and notes spread around her as she prepared for finals. Lost in thought, she absent-mindedly twirled a pencil between her fingers, the soft scratching sound creating a rhythmic backdrop to her studying. Something warm touched her knee. Emma looked down to find the cat. She'd taken to calling her Goldie for her amber eyes, cautiously placing one paw on her leg. The cat's gaze met hers questioning, uncertain, but with a glimmer of something that might have been trust. "Well, hello there," Emma said softly, keeping her body very still. "Decided to join me after all." The cat blinked slowly, then, with deliberate care, stepped fully onto Emma's lap. She turned once, twice, then settled into a tight circle, her now clean fur warm against Emma's skin through her thin pajama pants. And then, so quietly that Emma almost missed it, a purr. Tears welled in Emma's eyes. Such a small victory, yet it felt monumental. From that day forward, the barriers between them fell away piece by piece. Emma learned that the cat enjoyed sitting on the windowsill, watching birds at the feeder Emma installed on the narrow balcony. She discovered that a piece of string dragged slowly across the carpet could transform the usually dignified feline into a playful kitten. She found that the cat preferred to sleep, curled against Emma's neck, her purr a soothing lullaby that often chased away Emma's recurring nightmares about being forgotten, left behind. As the cat's body healed, filling out from proper nutrition and regular meals, Emma noticed changes in herself as well. The weight that had pressed on her chest for so long seemed lighter. She found herself smiling more, even laughing out loud, when the cat performed particularly acrobatic feats in pursuit of a toy mouse. The looming uncertainty of post-graduation life still hovered on the horizon, but it no longer seemed quite so terrifying. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber that matched the cat's eyes, Emma had a revelation. "You know what? I don't think Goldie suits you after all," she told the cat, who regarded her with that inscrutable feline gaze. "You're more like Willow, bending but not breaking, no matter what storm comes your way." The cat, Willow, blinked slowly, then butted her head against Emma's hand, as if in approval of her new name. As finals week approached, Emma noticed Willow becoming more attentive, almost protective. If Emma stayed up too late studying, Willow would sit on her textbook or nudge her arm insistently. When Emma's stress levels rose, evidenced by the return of her nail-biting habit, Willow would climb in her lap and purr until the tension in Emma's shoulders eased. "It's like she knows," Emma told her academic advisor during a pre-graduation meeting. "Like she can sense when I'm about to spiral and steps in the ground." Patel smiled. "Animals often have an intuitive understanding of human emotions. It's one of the reasons therapy animals can be so effective for anxiety and depression. Have you considered registering her as an emotional support animal? It might make finding post-graduation housing easier." The suggestion was like a lifeline thrown to a drowning person. Emma hadn't dared to imagine a future with Willow beyond the end of the semester. But Dr. Patel's words opened a door to possibilities she hadn't considered. That night, as Willow kneaded Emma's stomach with gentle paws, purring contentedly, Emma allowed herself to dream. Perhaps they could find a small apartment in the city where Emma had been offered an entry-level publishing job. Maybe the practical experience of caring for another living being would translate into the self-assurance Emma needed to navigate the adult world. Was it possible that this unexpected relationship was not a temporary detour, but a new path entirely? For the first time in years, Emma felt hope blooming in her chest. Fragile, tentative, but unmistakably real. But time doesn't forgive. One morning, Emma found Willow lying on the floor of her apartment, too weak to move. Panic took over. She ran to the vet, holding her in her arms as if her life depended on it. "She's very weak. It might be too late," said the veterinarian. But Emma didn't accept that answer. She covered her with warm blankets, patiently fed her, stayed by her side every night, whispering words of comfort. This time, no one would abandon her. The veterinarian's office was small and cramped, filled with a mingled sense of antiseptic animal fur and fear. Dr. Rivera, a petite woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner, examined Willow with gentle but thorough hands while Emma hovered nearby, unable to sit still, her hands twisting the strap of her purse into a tortured knot. "How long has she been like this?" Dr. Rivera asked, listening to Willow's heart through a stethoscope. "I don't know exactly," Emma admitted, guilt washing over her. "She seemed a little lethargic yesterday, but I had a final exam and was out most of the day. This morning I found her on the floor, and she couldn't. She wouldn't get up." Her voice cracked on the last words. Dr. Rivera nodded, her expression neutral and professional. Her temperature is very low and she's severely dehydrated. I'm also concerned about her heart rate. It's quite irregular. Has she been eating and drinking normally? Emma tried to think back through the haze of finals week stress. Had Willow's food bowl been emptying as usual? Had she been using the litter box with her typical fastidiousness in her exam-induced tunnel vision? Had she missed signs that something was wrong? I'm not sure, she admitted, shame coloring her cheeks. I've been distracted with end-of-semester stuff. If the veterinarian judged her for this, she gave no indication. Instead, she gently placed Willow on the examination table and began listing the tests she wanted to run. Blood work, X-rays, an echocardiogram. Each item added to the rapidly mounting cost of the visit, a cost that Emma, with her student loans and part-time cafe job, could ill afford. But looking at Willow's frail form, at the trust in those amber eyes, even as the cat struggled to breathe, Emma knew she would find a way to pay. She would work double shifts, sell her textbooks, delay paying other bills, whatever it took. Do it all, she told Dr. Rivera. Please just help her. The diagnosis, when it came hours later, was both better and worse than Emma had feared. Not cancer, not feline leukemia, but a severe case of pneumonia, complicated by a heart murmur and the lingering effects of Willow's months of malnutrition and exposure. Treatable, but serious and expensive. She'll need to stay here for at least 3 days, Dr. Rivera explained. For antibiotics, fluid therapy, supplemental oxygen, round-the-clock monitoring. I can't guarantee it will be enough, but without this level of care, she left the sentence unfinished, but Emma understood the implication. Without intensive treatment, Willow would die. Then we do it, Emma said, her voice firmer than she felt. Whatever she needs. The following days were a blur of classes, work shifts, and visits to the veterinary hospital. Emma slept little and ate less. Her entire focus narrowed to making it through finals while earning enough to cover Willow's mounting medical bills. She picked up extra shifts at the cafe, took on a classmate's grocery shopping for a fee, and even sold her graduation gown, reasoning that she could borrow one for the ceremony. Each evening, she spent an hour at Willow's side in the veterinary hospital, talking softly to the cat through the plastic door of the oxygen chamber. Willow's condition improved incrementally. Her temperature normalized. Her breathing became less labored, but she remained weak, barely responsive to Emma's voice or touch. On the third night, as Emma prepared to leave the hospital, Dr. Rivera took her aside. You need to prepare yourself, she said gently. We're doing everything we can, but she was very ill when you brought her in, and given her age and history. Her age, Emma interrupted. What do you mean? She's not old. Dr. Rivera's expression softened. Emma Willow is not a young cat, based on her teeth and other indicators. I'd estimate she's at least 10, possibly older. Add to that the trauma of living on the streets, the malnutrition, the exposure to the elements. Her body has endured a lot. 10 years old. The revelation hit Emma like a physical blow. She had assumed Willow was young, perhaps 2 or 3 at most. But 10? That meant Willow had lived an entire life before Emma found her, a life that included, presumably a home, an owner, care and comfort, all of which she had lost somehow. Someone abandoned her. Emma whispered, the pieces falling into place. Someone had her for years, and then just left her at the university to fend for herself. The thought was unbearable. How could anyone discard a living being that way, especially one who had given them years of companionship? What kind of person could drive away, knowing they were leaving part of their family behind to suffer, possibly die? Emma's hands clenched into fists. She's going to make it, she said, the words half promise, half prayer. She has to. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Willow's former owner. Had it been a student who graduated and couldn't take a pet to their new apartment? A professor who moved to another university? Someone who simply grew tired of the responsibility? The what-ifs tortured her. What if she had found Willow sooner? What if she had been more attentive this past week? Noticed the signs of illness earlier? What if Willow died alone in a strange place, believing she had been abandoned yet again? Before dawn, Emma made a decision. She called the veterinary hospital as soon as they opened, informed them she was coming to pick up Willow, and then spent an hour online researching home care for cats with pneumonia. If Willow's time was limited, Emma was determined that she wouldn't spend it in the cold sterility of a medical cage. Dr. Rivera was reluctant. She still needs careful monitoring. Emma, the oxygen therapy, the 4 antibiotics. These aren't things you can provide at home. I understand the risks, Emma insisted, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. But I don't want her to be alone and scared. If these might be her last days, I want her to feel loved. I'll bring her back for daily treatments, whatever she needs, please. Something in Emma's plea resonated with the veterinarian. Perhaps it was the determination in her eyes, or the simple truth that animals often heal better in familiar surroundings with those they trust. After reviewing Emma's makeshift care plan and providing additional instructions and medications, Dr. Rivera finally agreed to a compromise. Willow could go home under strict conditions with twice daily visits to the clinic. Emma transformed her tiny bedroom into a recovery ward. She moved her mattress to the floor so Willow wouldn't have to jump to reach her. She set up a humidifier to ease Willow's breathing, covered a heating pad with soft towels for warmth, and arranged all the medications, pills, drops, and a nebulizer for respiratory treatments on her desk with a detailed schedule. Her roommate, Tara, who had been gradually warming to Willow's presence, even contributed a set of small ceramic bowls for water, and the special recovery food Dr. Rivera had prescribed. "I can't believe you're doing all this for a stray," Tara remarked, watching Emma prepare for Willow's homecoming. But there was no judgment in her tone, only a kind of wonder. "She's not a stray anymore," Emma said simply. "She's mine, and I'm hers." The first few days were touch and go. Willow was so weak she could barely lift her head. Emma had to administer water with an eyedropper, coax tiny amounts of food into her with a finger, and clean her when she couldn't make it to the litter box. The nebulizer treatments were particularly challenging. Willow hated the mask and the hissing sound of the machine, struggling weakly against Emma's gentle restraint. Through it all, Emma talked to her. She read aloud from her textbooks, shared stories from her childhood, even confessed her fears about the future. Whether Willow understood, the words didn't matter. It was the voice, the connection, the unspoken promise. "I am here, and I will not leave you." Gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, Willow began to improve. Her breathing eased, becoming less labored. Her appetite returned small but consistent. The light came back to her golden eyes, and with it, recognition when Emma entered the room. A faint purr when Emma stroked her fur. 1 week after bringing Willow home, Emma woke to find the cat had moved during the night. No longer in her carefully prepared bed, Willow had dragged herself to Emma's side and was curled against her neck, her warm body rising and falling with each breath in a rhythm that matched Emma's own. Emma lay perfectly still, afraid to disrupt this precious moment. Tears slid silently from the corners of her eyes, dampening her pillow. It wasn't just Willow's physical improvement that moved her, but the profound trust the gesture represented after everything Willow had endured. Abandonment, homelessness, illness. She still chose to give her trust, her affection to another human. "Oh, Willow," Emma whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "We're going to be okay. Both of us, I promise." And slowly, Willow believed it. Her fur regained its shine. Her eyes brightened. She started to purr again. And then the past knocked at the door. Ben returned. He was at the university for a lecture when he heard students commenting about an old, sick cat that someone had rescued. The weight of guilt crushed him. He followed the clues to Emma's house. When he saw Willow, his eyes filled with tears. "Willow," she recognized him, but she didn't run to him. May had brought warmer weather and the frenetic energy of graduation preparations to campus. Emma, with her finals successfully behind her and only her thesis defense remaining, had fallen into a comfortable routine with Willow. Mornings began with medication and breakfast, followed by playtime if Willow felt energetic, or quiet companionship when she didn't. Afternoons often found them on the small balcony, Willow secure in a harness as she watched birds and enjoyed the fresh air while Emma worked on her laptop. Willow's recovery, though steady, had not been without setbacks. The pneumonia had weakened her heart, necessitating daily medication that Emma dutifully administered. There had been frightening nights when Willow's breathing grew labored, prompting emergency trips to the vet. But through it all, the bond between them had only strengthened. Rivera had been impressed by Emma's dedication. Most people wouldn't go to such lengths for an animal they've only known a few months. she remarked during Willow's latest checkup. Especially a student with your schedule and budget constraints, Emma had smiled, stroking Willow's ears as the cat submitted to the vet's examination with unusual patience. She's worth it. She paused, searching for words that wouldn't sound overly sentimental. She chose to trust me after someone else let her down. I won't make the same mistake. That afternoon, Emma was preparing for a study session with classmates when the knock came. 3 quick raps on her apartment door. Thinking it was probably her neighbor returning a borrowed textbook, she opened it without checking the peephole. Willow cradled comfortably in one arm. The young man standing in the hallway was a stranger to Emma, tall with tousled brown hair and glasses that couldn't quite hide the shadows under his eyes. He looked to be in his mid-20s, dressed in the business casual uniform of a young professional, chinos, a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and an expression of nervous anticipation that shifted to shock when his gaze fell on the cat in Emma's arms. Willow, he breathed, the name escaping him like a prayer. The effect of that single word on Willow was immediate and undeniable. Her body tensed, her ears pricked forward, and her golden eyes fixed on the man's face with an intensity that made Emma's heart contract painfully. She knew. Emma tightened her hold on Willow instinctively. "Who are you?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer. The man seemed unable to tear his gaze from Willow. "My name is Ben," he said, his voice thick with emotion. That's my cat. She was my cat. I can't believe she's alive." A complicated storm of emotions swept through Emma. Anger, fear, protectiveness, and beneath it all a hollow ache of anticipated loss. But she forced herself to remain calm for Willow's sake. "Perhaps we should talk," she said stiffly, stepping back to allow him into the apartment. Ben entered hesitantly, his eyes never leaving Willow. Would it be all right if I held her?" he asked, already extending his hands. Before Emma could respond, Willow made her own decision. Though she recognized Ben, that much was obvious. She didn't leap from Emma's arms, as Emma had feared she might. Instead, she pressed herself closer to Emma's chest, tucking her head beneath Emma's chin, as she had done whenever she felt uncertain or threatened during her recovery. The gesture wasn't lost on Ben. His outstretched hands fell to his sides, and a flush of shame colored his cheeks. "She doesn't." He swallowed hard. "But she doesn't want to come to me, would you?" Emma couldn't help asking, her protective instinct overriding her usual tact. If someone abandoned you without explanation, left you to fend for yourself in a hostile environment, would you rush back into their arms the moment they reappeared? Ben's face crumpled, the facade of the put-together young professional giving way to raw grief. "And I didn't abandon her," he whispered, though the defensive note in his voice suggested even he didn't fully believe his words. "I thought I'd arranged there was supposed to be someone who would take her." Emma gestured for him to sit on the small sofa while she took the armchair opposite. Willow still cradled protectively against her. The cat's eyes remained fixed on Ben, unblinking, inscrutable. "Tell me what happened," Emma said, not a request, but a demand. She needed to understand, for Willow's sake and for her own. Ben ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of agitation that seemed deeply ingrained. "I was graduating," he began. "I've been accepted to a graduate program in Boston. Full scholarship, huge opportunity, but the housing was strict. No pets allowed, no exceptions. I looked for alternatives, but everything in my price range had the same policy." Emma felt her jaw tighten. Already the excuses rang hollow. She'd heard variations of this story before, from her father explaining why he couldn't take her with him when he left, from friends justifying why they drifted away during difficult times. Convenience disguised as necessity. "I thought I'd found a solution," Ben continued, oblivious to her hardening expression. "My roommate was staying for summer classes, and he'd agreed to take care of Willow until I could find pet-friendly housing and come back for her. I left money for her food, her litter, everything she'd need, and yet she ended up on the streets," Emma observed, her voice cool. "I found her half dead in a rainstorm, emaciated, sick, terrified." Ben's shoulders slumped. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I called my roommate a few times that summer to check on her, and he said she was fine. Then when fall came and I asked about bringing her to Boston, he stopped answering my calls. Eventually, his number was disconnected." "You didn't come back to check," Emma pointed out. "Not once in all these months. I was working 3 jobs to cover expenses the scholarship didn't," Ben said, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. "I barely had time to sleep, let alone drive 6 hours each way. I tried calling the residence office, but they said they had no record of a cat in the room, and my old roommate had moved out. He leaned forward, an imploring look in his eyes. You have to believe me. I loved Willow. I would never have left her if I'd known what would happen. Emma stroked Willow's fur, feeling the steady rhythm of her purr against her hand. The cat was watching Ben, but she made no move to go to him, content to remain in the safety of Emma's arms. What was she thinking? Did she understand the explanation? Did she even care about the reasons, or only the result that the person she had trusted had disappeared from her life, leaving her alone and afraid? How did you find her? Emma asked, still processing Ben's story, still unsure whether to believe it. I'm back for a symposium at the university, he explained. While I was having coffee at the campus cafe, I overheard some students talking about that senior girl who rescued the old stray campus cat and how the cat had nearly died. They mentioned the cat had golden eyes, and he swallowed. I just knew. I asked around until someone recognized the description and pointed me to your building. Ben extended a tentative hand toward Willow, stopping short of touching her. I never thought I'd see her again, he whispered. When I realized what must have happened, that my roommate must have abandoned her, that she'd been living on the streets all this time, I couldn't bear it. Willow watched his hand, her body tense, but not fearful. After a long moment, she stretched her neck forward, just far enough to sniff his fingertips. The gesture seemed to break something in Ben. Tears spilled down his cheeks, and his breath hitched in a barely suppressed. I'm so sorry, he murmured to the cat. I'm so sorry, Willow. Emma felt her own eyes burning. Despite her lingering anger, there was something genuine in Ben's grief and his obvious love for Willow. The situation wasn't as black and white as she had first assumed. He hadn't intentionally abandoned Willow. He'd made a flawed plan that had failed catastrophically, but good intentions didn't erase the consequences. They didn't erase Willow's suffering, her months of fear and hunger, her near-death experience in the storm. They didn't erase the bond that had formed between Willow and Emma through the long nights of Willow's illness, the patient care, the gradually earned trust. What do you want now? Emma asked quietly, the unspoken question hanging heavy in the air between them. Are you here to take her back? Ben expected her to meow with happiness. He expected her to run into his arms, but Willow remained in Emma's arms. Ben reached out his hand. Willow hesitated. For the first time, she didn't run to him. Emma observed the scene in silence before saying, you can't come back only when it's convenient for you. Ben lowered his head. It was too late. The silence that followed Emma's words was profound, broken only by the soft sound of Willow's purring. Ben's outstretched hand trembled, then slowly withdrew. He looked up at Emma with eyes that reflected both understanding and profound loss. You're right, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I can't just waltz back into her life and expect things to be the same. He paused, visibly struggling with the admission. She's not mine anymore, is she? Emma's arms tightened around Willow instinctively, but she forced herself to consider the question with honesty. And I don't think cats ever truly belong to anyone, she said after a moment. They choose who they trust, who they love. Right now, Willow has chosen to stay with me, but that doesn't mean she doesn't remember you or that you didn't matter to her. Ben nodded slowly, accepting the gentle rejection with a dignity that softened Emma's anger toward him. You've taken good care of her, he observed, his gaze taking in Willow's improved condition. Her clean, shiny fur, her clear eyes, the healthy weight she had regained. Better than I did in the end. She was very sick when I found her, Emma said, not to wound him, but because she felt he needed to know. Pneumonia, heart problems from the stress and exposure. The vet wasn't sure she'd make it. Ben winced, guilt washing over his features. But she did make it. Because of you. He hesitated, then asked, would it be all right if maybe sometimes I could visit her, not to try to take her back, just to see her know she's okay? The request surprised Emma. She had expected him to either demand Willow's return or walk away entirely. Not this humility, this acceptance of a middle ground. She looked down at Willow, who was watching Ben with that inscrutable feline gaze, neither fearful nor enthusiastic. I think that will be okay, Emma said finally, if Willow wants it, and if you understand that her home is with me now. Ben nodded, relief evident in the loosening of his shoulders. Thank you, he said simply, and then addressing Willow directly. I'm so glad you found someone who loves you as much as you deserve to be loved, more than I could give you in the end, as he rose to leave. Something shifted in Willow's demeanor. She stirred in Emma's arms, then, with a graceful movement, leapt to the floor. Emma's heart constricted painfully. Was Willow choosing Ben after all? But the cat didn't go to Ben. Instead, she padded to her favorite toy, a small felt mouse, and batted it toward him, then looked up expectantly. It was a peace offering of sorts, Emma realized. Not forgiveness, perhaps, but acknowledgement. A willingness to begin again on new terms. Ben knelt and rolled the mouse back to Willow, who pounced on it with a playfulness Emma hadn't seen since her illness. "Goodbye for now, old friend," he said softly. Then to Emma, "Thank you for saving her when I couldn't, for giving her what I failed to." After he left, Emma sat on the floor beside Willow, who had abandoned her toy and returned to Emma's side, pressing her warm body against Emma's leg. "Well," Emma said, scratching gently behind Willow's ears. "That was unexpected." Willow looked up at her and blinked slowly. A cat's kiss, a gesture of complete trust and affection. That night, Willow slept in Emma's arms. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't waiting for anyone to return. She had already found her true home. Epilogue. Full circle. 2 years later, Emma sat at her desk in the small but sunny apartment she had rented after accepting a job with a publishing house. Through the open window, spring breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers and the distant sounds of the city awakening to morning. On her lap, Willow dozed contentedly, her golden eyes closed in peaceful slumber, her once thin body now healthy and strong. The medications for her heart condition sat on a shelf nearby, a reminder of her past struggles, but no longer a cause for daily worry. Emma's fingers moved lazily through Willow's fur as she read through the manuscript on her computer screen. It was her own work, a children's book inspired by Willow's story about a cat who discovers that home isn't a place, but a feeling, a connection, a bond that transcends understanding. Ben visited occasionally as promised. His graduate studies completed, he had found a teaching position at a nearby college and had even adopted a kitten of his own. A rescue, he'd been quick to point out. Willow tolerated his visits with dignified grace, accepting his tentative affection without reservation, but always returning to Emma's side when he left. Life hadn't turned out as Emma had planned during those anxious days of her senior year. The path had twisted in unexpected ways, leading her to this quiet morning, this peaceful moment, this profound understanding of what it meant to find a home in another's heart. Willow stirred in her lap, stretching languidly before settling back into sleep. Emma smiled, remembering the frightened, broken creature she had found in the rain that night. How far they had both come since then. From abandonment to belonging, from isolation to connection, from fear to trust that we saved each other, didn't we? Emma whispered, bending to press a gentle kiss to Willow's head. And in the quiet of the morning, as sunlight spilled across the floor and Willow's purr vibrated against her hand, Emma understood a truth both simple and profound. Sometimes the ones who have been left behind are the ones most capable of staying. Sometimes the hearts that have been broken are the ones that love most completely. And sometimes, in the most unexpected places, we find exactly what we need, not just to survive, but to truly live. Willow opened her golden eyes, looking up at Emma with that unfathomable feline wisdom. In that gaze was everything. Memory and forgiveness, past and present. The long journey that had brought them both to this moment of perfect understanding. No words are needed. They were home. The end. If you like this video, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who are interested in this video.